Hello and welcome to the first of our video series on basic computer skills. In this video we are going to be looking at some basic computer hardware to kind of set a foundation for future videos to come. So I'm going to start out by talking about some main hardware components on the computer. We're going to be looking at the computer case, the motherboard, the CPU or the processor, the RAM, the hard disk drive or a solid state drive, a power supply, and graphics card. So think of the computer case as kind of the skeletal system of the computer that kind of holds everything together and protects all the parts inside. The motherboard is essentially going to be like the nervous system which connects all the internal components together. So the CPU or the processor, think of that as the brains of the computer that does all the actual processing. RAM, which is a type of computer memory, think of that as the short-term memory of the computer. And then followed by that is our hard disk drive or hard drives or the solid state drives, and that's going to be your long-term memory, and that's going to be like a permanent storage, whereas the RAM before this is only a kind of temporary storage medium and only going to actually be able to store information when it actually has power running to it. Our power supply here is, think of that as the fuel or energy, which obviously provides power to the system to make everything function. And then we have our graphics card, which is kind of like the optical processing. So next we're going to look at some secondary hardware components, including optical drives, ports, system cooling, other internal cards, and floppy drives, just to cover, even though they are a bit obsolete at this point. So optical drives, that's going to be basically like your CD, DVD player, anything that essentially has media read with a laser. So ports, you'll find various ports, on the back of your motherboard or like on the case of your computer, typically like on the front. This is like where you're going to plug in your USB and video devices to the computer. And so for cooling, you'll see two options in the computer. You'll have like a fan or air cooling or water cooling. The most common is going to be the fan cooling, with the water cooling being a bit more expensive, which is why you don't see that as much. And then other internal cards, it can be a variety of cards, so like you can actually have a wireless, if you want to put on your desktop, different kinds of other video cards or other types of sound cards, extra USB ports, kind of anything you want to put on there you can almost find as an internal card. And then floppy drives, these are obviously obsolete, was basically replaced by the CDs that came after them. But just for reference, because you might see other computers out there you may come across and may still have that, in case you ever wonder what that is a floppy drive and has like a little diskette that would be put in there, kind of a square, typically black, but can be kind of any colored plastic for the casing. And we'll also real quick look at some common peripheral hardware components for the computer. So obviously monitors, various configurations and sizes. Keyboards, you can have wireless or wired keyboards, and same for the mice. You can have a wired or wireless, and it can be just a basic mouse to a mouse with extra buttons, and actually back on the keyboard you can have keyboards with extra buttons and programmable keys as well. So you can have also a combination of different speakers and headphones for the computers, webcams, different types of mics from a basic to a more professional type setup, and then a KVM switch. You may not necessarily see this as much, but it's important to note what that stands for is a keyboard, video, and mouse switch, which essentially allows you to plug up a single set of monitor, keyboard, mouse, and then have that hooked into multiple computers, and by switching the input on the KVM switch you can control multiple systems with one set again of keyboard, mice, and monitors. And real quickly, just going to cover some common computer ports that you might encounter. So you have your video ports, your VGA, DVI, HDMI, and display port. You have your USB. There's obviously different types of USB. So from the various standards of use from 1.0 all the way to the current, which is 3.0, and then different types of like USB A, B, or C. Micro, mini. So there's several charts out there you can get to kind of tell you what's what. And typically, to denote the current standard USB 3.0, that is typically going to have a kind of blue bar on the inside. Then you have Thunderbolt. A lot of people might think this is an Apple technology, but this actually came out of Intel. And then, as you can see, Thunderbolt 3 is also the same port as the USB Type-C. Your Ethernet, that's for your network connection to kind of get your internet connection. Think of that like just a larger phone cable and port. Audio, pretty straightforward. Just your standard like 3.5 millimeter. There are other types as well. Firewire, this is a bit more on the obsolete, but typically you used to see this a lot more on the Mac computers. And these ports are definitely obsolete, but you may still come across them on occasion. Serial and parallel. The larger of the two is the parallel, the smaller being serial. And yes, the serial does look similar to VGA, but it has less pins on them. And one quick distinction I want to make when talking about a computer and their monitor, if someone asks you to tell them if the computer is on or not, a lot of times I've seen people look at the monitor and say, oh, it looks like it's off, but the computer may actually be on. So that's a distinction to make. The monitor will not always reflect what the actual computer shows, the computer being the actual box that you would see on the right image here. And just a quick overview of the different types of main hardware items you'd see. You have a desktop, laptop, you have a tablet, smartphone, and wearables, and also kind of a combo between desktop and laptop. You have what we call all-in-one devices, which essentially just looks like a big monitor with everything built into it. So that is everything, just a quick brief overview on the basic hardware. In our next video, we will be talking about operating systems.